Hello, thank you for inviting me. It's nice to be here, to meet you, so many talented people and beautiful personalities. I'm really very happy to be here today. Well, if my voice is shaking, it's simply because I'm terrified. But I will do my best for you. I'm a font engineer from Monotype office in Berlin, and today I'm going to talk about how we experience reading and if it can be improved, if it needs to be improved. First, books. Books can take you to other places, give you knowledge, inspiration, cure you from existential problems, expand your empathy, and even improve your general well-being. This is a simple and, in a way, amazing object, really important to our culture, but also very, very simple. You can move through the pages to read the content. You can also add notes, edit it with a pencil. If it has an index, it's searchable. It's kind of portable, you can carry it around, although those of us who had to move our libraries to another flat may won't agree on that. And well, I love books, and I know probably many of us here does too. E-readers are similar in a way, but somehow the experience is different. I would say less pleasant. Okay, now, how many of you read a paper book last month? Please raise your hands. Okay, quite a lot. Good. And how many of us read a book on a screen or on a reader last month? Okay, a little less, but still not bad. Okay, interesting. Well, I don't like reading from e-readers or especially from screen. But why? And what can we do about it? How we can improve? Those questions had been haunting me for the last few months, and I like to share with you what I found out and where it led me. So first, there is no difference in mechanics or technique of reading when we read from screen, e-ink paper or traditional paper. Eyes jump to words, fixate, jump back, and yeah, there it is. Now, it is important to distinguish that there are two types of reading. One is deep reading, in other words, slow reading, and other is fast reading. It's like from cover to cover, line by line. This type of reading is called deep reading or slow reading. So it's an active process of thoughtful and deliberate reading. This type of reading increases one's comprehension, understanding, and enjoyment of a text. And then fast reading can be divided into scanning and skimming. Skimming is when we look through the text quickly to get a general idea. It is said that skimming and scanning are most common form of reading nowadays. Like we read many online articles, just not, most of us don't get to second, third paragraph if it's like long text. Yeah, only few of us get through all articles usually when we read online. And it might make the impression that this type of reading was not existing in print era, but well, it did. So scanning is when we search for a word in a dictionary or for a time of an event in a schedule or for a font in a font book. And then reading is essential to our brains. Did you know that until the age of 2 to 3 years, the minds of humans and chimpanzees are showing similar development? It's only with the acquisition of the language, which includes reading, that suddenly our brain leap forward. In the cognitive development, language and reading is really crucial for humans. If and how we read also highly influences how we perceive the world and react to it. So now please imagine a beach ball next to this woman. She's about to kick it. On which side a ball will appear? Can you tell? You can scream. Okay. And can I ask, raise your hand if you thought it's going to be on the other side. Okay. Can you shout which script do you read? I cannot see you, but... Latin and then... Any maybe Hebrew or Arabic speakers? Okay, perfect, brilliant. So for speakers of languages which read from right to left, like Hebrew, Arabic, it's most likely to be on the left side when we imagine the ball. It appears that reading has so much impact on us that the script direction influences the way one orders events in the real world. This effect is called a directional bias, and it's observed in children just after 1 year they start reading. So this is how much reading influences our minds. It's also interesting to discover that reading is really not natural to our brains. It uses other abilities, such as spoken language, motor coordination, vision, and object recognition. And it is also worth to mention that just as we can develop this skill, we can lose it. Interesting side fact, when we read Chinese Hanzi, Japanese kanji or cursive, the brain goes through the motions of writing, even if we don't hold any writing tool in our hands. Now, the obvious reason why reading from a screen on the computer or an iPhone is very difficult, it's because all sorts of distraction that appear. I find it extremely difficult. But it's not all about it. Now, I need one volunteer on a stage here. Please. Yeah, come on. Please come to us. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Yeah. Thank you for being so brave. So I'm not sure if you're going to like it, but we are going to do a little blind test. So please, if you can cover your eyes.
Zorro.
Please come here. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to give you a bag now, and things, objects inside. And please, if you can, just a second, I'm opening it. If you can, there it is. Reach inside and grab one of the objects.
Okay. Okay.
You got one, okay. So now please try to describe it.
Okay, well, it's obviously a book.
Can you speak?
Oh. Well, I can see. So. Well, it's obviously a book. And I'm thinking, like, by the paper, maybe a vintage book, like an old book.
Okay.
It's worn and torn and, like, been flipped through a lot of times, I think, maybe.
Okay, can you try to guess a title?
Oh, wow.
You can try to, you can listen to the pages, you can, yes, try to describe as many things as, as you can.
It's not telling me much.
So maybe what type of book would it be? A genre?
Well, either it's like a novel that's been read many times by many people, or it's someone that's had it like to look for information and used it a lot. So I don't know, either fact or...
Okay, okay. Thank you. And now please reach again.
I hope there are no spiders in here.
I promise no. I removed all.
Okay, so this would be a dictionary, like a word dictionary for a language, maybe?
Okay. Why? Why do you think so?
No, because of like the plastic and the rounded corners and the, maybe a bit thicker paper than I'd expect.
Okay, okay. Thank you. I'm going to take this, and there is the last one. So what's specific about this one?
This one has, it's loose in here. I'm guessing it wasn't from the start. It's like maybe one of these little, like my grandparents would carry with them, like a little Catholic sort of short Bible thing.
So it's little, like.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. You can remove your
Okay.
scarf.
Oh.
Here are goodies for you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Marianna.
Thanks. Yes, so the last one was indeed a prayer book. It survived the wars in my family. So yes, it's very tiny. You can hold it in your hands, and it's very portable. It was also kind of like a magic object that, it helps. It's like, it's supposed to protect you. And it's not a book for continuous reading. Like you would look up, you would use it as a kit for learning the prayers. And it's a very funny one because there are prices. So if you would say one, you would get less days at the end in like this place where you go in between, go to the heaven. So it's a kind of interesting book. And it was also designed to survive a lot. Okay. The next one it was the first one you described to us, Sarah, and this is indeed a novel, Creatures of Circumstance. It was published by a book club. It's well made. You have a bookmark, thank you very much, bookmark inside. And someone was reading it, and it's meant to be read from cover to cover. And another type of book. You very well guessed that it's a dictionary. So there are some notes inside, someone was learning, and so the paper is thin, and we can hear like the pages, a lot of content inside. And it was, of course, for looking for the words. So we can see now how many information we can get just like even without looking at the book or reading the content, like how many aspects they have. And e-readers fail to capture this crucial, generally overlooked aspect of paper books, their physicality. Yes, I know it sounds banal, but it is really more important than we think. And here's why. While deep reading is possible when we read from screen, for many it is more difficult. I noticed that I remember less. And there is an interesting fact about deep reading. It involves constructing mental model of text. Let me explain. When we read, we construct a mental landscape of a text. The exact nature of this is unclear, but they are likely to be similar to the mental maps we create of terrain. So we might remember that we passed a fountain before we turned into a narrow street, where we saw that funny sign of cinema, that one with falling kind of drunk sea. Just as we would remember that we read about Hobbit Bilbo engaging in game of riddles with Gollum on the bottom of left-hand page in one of the earlier chapters. And that feel where you are in a physical book turns out to be more important than we realized. And slow reading, deep reading, is very beneficial for us because this type of reading puts our brain into trance-like meditative state. It brings us the same health benefits as deep relaxation or meditation. Regular readers sleep better, have lower stress levels, higher self-esteem, and lower rates of depression. Reading literary fiction is also a very rewarding emotional experience because we can safely be empathetic. So we can express our feelings for the character in a book without any risk of because there's obviously no reaction. So surprisingly, we react more sometimes than to everyday events. Reading also teaches us to stay focused, so which is really difficult now with this constant multitasking. So I hope I gave you some great excuses to read. I was very happy to find out about all of this because I love to read. And then laboratory experiments, consumer reports claim that modern screens and e-readers fail to adequately recreate experiences of reading on paper that many people miss and prevent people from navigating long text in an intuitive and satisfying way. Luckily, studies saying that we understand less and read slower from screens are no longer relevant. But it is important to note that scrolling or any links, any distraction, drain more of our mental resources while we're reading from screen, which makes it a little harder to remember when we read. So that means it's easier for us to learn from physical books. Moreover, other research focusing on people's attitudes toward different kinds of media shows that whether we realize it or not, many of us approaches computers and tablets with a state of mind less conducive to learning than the one we bring to the paper. And another thing, digital fatigue. So it's really more and more common nowadays. We like to take breaks. I personally like to take offline weekends, and I find it very beneficial. And yes, online skimming and scanning is not everything. So deep reading, deep thinking is worth making an effort to preserve, I think. And it is possible because brain just reflects how we live, and for that we need to read. And we need books, we need beautiful books, carefully set in beautiful, readable typefaces. It's good for us, for our culture, and that's why we care about good typography, why ergonomic typesetting matters, and that's why we are here, I suppose. So I was in a bit of a trouble here, because I had this idea of talking about improved, ideal device for reading, about redesigning reading experience, and here I am talking about how great books are, and that we'll never be able to recreate or improve this experience with digital media. So I started to worry about what am I going to tell you. But then I went on a trip. So a few weeks ago, I was traveling. I saw a man with a phone, which intrigued me. This phone had two covers. Front was a normal touch screen, and the back was e-ink paper screen. We started to talk, and I got really excited when he told me that he especially likes to read on the second screen. So he told me some interesting things. He's a programmer, and he told me that, for example, he likes to make statistics. So he checks which word is more common or the least common word in the whole book. I think like really unusual, but okay, interesting. Then he likes the ability to make notes and search. Notes especially because before he was always renting books from a library. He travels a lot, so mobility matters to him. He likes to have many books with him. And what was very important to him is ecology. And I found that very beautiful. So not for everyone reading from books, paper books, it's better. For different reasons and better experience. And well, I looked at the typesetting and I was impressed that he can read whole books with such settings. He said to me that he gets tired more easily and it takes him longer to read, but he still likes to borrow a book from library from time to time. I was wondering, I'm wondering what can we do anything to improve this experience? First, of course, I would like to see good typography. Of course, this is a must, and I won't elaborate on that now. Good settings, educated designers and developers, yes. And we know that we probably would never beat the books. I believe that books print won't disappear though. But maybe not every book deserves print. Guidebooks, this airplane literature, anything that we would read only once. And I also know that for books, for me, for example, sentiment plays a great role. I like to just simply have some books I like in print. But if we are afraid that books will extinct, please don't be. This is an example from history of old-fashioned technology. So the scroll was replaced by the codex, but by the end of antiquity, between the 2nd and 4th centuries. But it doesn't mean that scrolls disappeared completely. They exist when the form was best suited to its function. For example, when it was very difficult to predict the length of the text, like in this case. So this image from a scroll shows this is a scroll that was sent after a death and funeral of one of the head of nunnery in Essex. So when she died, it was around 1225. The nuns sent the roll to other religious houses, asking them to pray for her soul. It passed around East England, back and forth across southern England, and each house was adding its inscription, asking for these prayers back. And if the scroll was not long enough, if the paper was not long enough, they would just add another piece. That's why it was not in a form of a book, which were very common, more common. Codexes were more common than scrolls. But here the function was most important. And then I really like this film here. It's about professional love letter writer Theodore Twombly, who falls in love with artificial intelligent operating system. And I like this idea of kind of honored print that appears there at the end of the movie. So he writes these beautiful letters, and in the end they got printed in paper. And it's a futuristic movie, and it's something like really special. So when it comes to intensively reading long pieces of plain text, paper and ink may still have the advantage, but it's not the only way to read. Why are we working so hard to make reading with new technologies like tablets and e-readers so similar to the experience of reading on the very ancient technology that is paper? I think that it's also great to see that screen-based reading evolves in something completely different. Screens obviously offer readers experiences that paper cannot. Scrolling may be not the ideal way to navigate through a long text of a book, of a novel, but New York Times, like here, and other media are creating these beautiful, highly visual articles. They use scrolling in a very, very great way, I think. So there's article about climate change, and it shows how one of the lakes is disappearing. So as you scroll down, you get all these additional informations and pieces, and you can really see and understand in a totally different way than if you just read it on paper. And technology is changing, and it's best if we are prepared, if we are already thinking how we can use it or how we can get involved, because technology, culture, and typography does not improve by itself. It takes time and effort to come up with great ideas. So maybe let's have a look on what's happening and imagine together how the future might look like, how the devices of the future could look and feel. So maybe this device will have a flexible screen. There are some startups working on this flexible screens. I find it very weird and interesting. Then another project, like you could read from your body. I don't think I would like it so much because I like tattoos. I would like to have more. Wouldn't be so convenient for me. And then that doesn't look very too impressive, but it's a slide from a very visionary animation from 2009. It's called Text 2.0, and the animation was about embedding cameras in readers for eye tracking, and then if you would look at something, the device would give you additional information. It would explain the word you don't know. Yeah, that's I found really. I recommend to check it out. But it wasn't. It was the project is from 2009, and still no one tried to implement it. And then new technologies like virtual reality, which allows to take user to another location. And then recently at Typo Berlin, at the conference, I could experience watching beautiful VR documentary piece. It's called Inside the Biennale, and it was made by Gary Haswit and his team in Cynic. I was feeling a little bit like an owl reading, you know. I had to turn my head like this because the lettering was so big and so close to me, and also the rendering is not yet perfect, but it's improving. It's interesting. So maybe one day we will be like inside a book. We could read like in this interesting project by Laszlo. And then mixed reality, in which virtual objects are responsive to the natural world and to the user. And it's an interesting question, I think, how a responsive interactive typography could get. I can imagine it being a very dynamic environment with highly scalable elements. And there are, in fact, some designers who already are working with typography in these environments. Don Yoon Park from Microsoft, a designer of a typography inside application, recently worked on porting this application to HoloLens, mixed reality environment. So here you can see him moving type, placing it in different places. There we go. And using different scales and perspectives. This project reminds me about one of the most important concepts in design, the idea of scale. Nowadays we scale very often. These pinch and unpinch gestures we make in order to zoom in and out feel already so natural to us. We use different displays, different resolutions, and I think that with new technologies this tendency will increase. However, even if the concept of changing scale is very common, it is not so easy to make fonts scalable in an appropriate way. And I'm talking about the concept of an optical size. For those of you who don't know, I will explain a bit. Rest, you can take a nap, forgive me. This concept refers to something different than simply increasing or decreasing the size of the letter form. It's all about size of the text. Before industrialization, before times when machines took over the production of matrices, every style and font size was produced by hand. Punch cutters had to cut each weight of a typeface separately. This was an extremely laborious and expensive process. That's why an expert engraver would adapt each font size, and optical size adjustments were a side effect of this. So, what are those adjustments? First, you can see that spacing is looser, width of the letters is increased, overall weight of typeface is increased, and there are some more adjustments. I will talk about it a bit later. And also features are emphasized, or like in this case, suppressed. Please take a look at the curl, loop and tail in the uppercase Q. And you can see here how the features are getting suppressed. And seems like with the start of the photo typesetting era, and then with the start of the digital revolution, concept of optical size somehow became a little bit forgotten. Because we could simply take the same shape, represented by, for example, by an outline, scale almost however we want. So today, optical adjustments are mostly present in hinting, if we are lucky enough to have a hinted font. It is important to say that some of the designers of GX fonts, like Robert Slimbach from Adobe, were trying to revive the idea of optical sizes. And others, like Akira Kobayashi, one of type directors at Monotype, decided to solve this issue designing single subfamilies. Example of this is his typeface Clifford. This typeface has 6 weights, 3 Roman and 3 italics. Those weights are named by their optical size: 18 for large text, 9 for text around 9 to 12.6 for use in smaller sizes. It was inspired by this book, an edition of Pliny, but the Younger, opera, printed by the Fullis brothers in 1751. Here you can see the typeface. So that inspired the first sketches, and then Akira was not, he wasn't digitizing them, but he was just getting inspiration. He had an idea of making this very readable font, and he also decided to make all the optical corrections. Although the size, the name is the typefaces are named by its size. It's just a recommendation. Now, it was already talked about, but variable fonts were announced last year in Warsaw, and they are an amazing occasion, I think, to bring back and embrace this concept of optical size. So I joined a Monotype office in autumn, and the excitement after announcing variable fonts was still in the air. One afternoon we started talking, we got enthusiastic and decided to start a side project. So we took Clifford and start working with it, and I was very happy about this choice because it's one of my favorite typeface. It is so legible. I was really happy. So yes, we made a variable font out of it, and here you can say again the optical size adjustments. So besides all of it I already talked about, the apertures are open, the X height is increased, stroke contrast is reduced, and small contours are enlarged. But then it wasn't enough for us. We thought, wouldn't it be great if the typeface can change accordingly to the point size and adjust the optical size automatically? So a few months ago at Typolabs, I was really happy to hear that we don't have to worry about that in the future, because now it's automatic. So there is a diagram explaining this axis. This axis is used to vary design to suit different text sizes. Values can be interpreted as a text size in points. For producing this variable font, the most challenging part was to create point-compatible masters without losing distinctive features of each master. Some characters vary so much that it was impossible to make them interpolate harmoniously, and we had to find a solution. So we decided to use glyph substitutions based on axis coordinates. I know that sounds really geeky and scary, but I'm going to explain it a little bit. Here you can see different characters. Yeah, look at the loops, the tails. So now a font is built of tables, like I like to think about it like boxes. And there are different things inside. And now in one of these boxes, GPOS, we can define, like, we have info font, we have letters and they have numbers assigned, so everything is in place. And then you can have some variation of the glyph. So they have different numbers, and how you do it, you just assign, like you tell the computer of, if, for example, you want to have a G that, if it's at the end of the word, has this tail, you can just define it by, like, saying, oh, hey, if the G is at the end of the word, replace 67 by 576. And if the user chooses horror vacui style, like very baroque, then replace it with 582. So in variation fonts, it is possible to assign change to a certain point on the axis. And this glyph substitution is, this is the glyph substitution based on axis coordinates. So we put the slider, and when it crosses different point, it automatically is changing. So that's what's happening. We prepared those two versions of the glyph in a font, and then, yes, we built it simply like this. And as we were working on those fonts, we needed a test environment. That's why we prepared the website. So user can adjust the text size, and the optical size will automatically change. And now it's also supported outside of this. Was our environment before it was done as it can be done automatically. And then, because many devices today have cameras so they can see us, we started experimenting with face recognition and face tracking algorithms, and for this project we chose Beyond Reality Face. We thought that if we could measure the size of a head, then make text enlarge or decrease depending on how far the user is from the device. But of course, we pretty quickly discovered that first, if the adjustments is happening constantly and the user is moving, the text constantly changes. That it is highly uncomfortable to stay frozen while reading. And it is very difficult to read when the text is constantly changing. Very annoying. The conclusion was the adjustment should be really, really subtle, or rather available as a calibration. So before we start reading. The website is available in German and in English. And we have hidden little interactive surprises for you. So you can read a great article about optical size written by Volker Ronneberger. So I encourage you to go check out it yourself. If you want to use all the features, please use the developer browser. And then, I would like to see in the future like PDF files that change the optical size automatically and all this stuff. I hope it will really develop. We'll see. And I would like to show you now some faces behind this project, so you already know me, together with Imka. We work on creating font variable font. And Bernd Vollmer was the one responsible for the design of the website and all the interactive ideas. And then Johannes was our developer. He was taking care that there are not too many bugs there. So he's just discovered one in a font. Andreas Frolov was our mentor and support. So I'd like to encourage you to play with new technologies, with variable fonts, to make fonts with optical sizes, or try to use them. And yeah, well, I really believe that technology, I already said that, I really believe that technology and culture only improves when lots of people are working hard together. Thank you.